My boss had reserved the private room at the back of a steakhouse for her birthday and invited the entire team, and when I came in 10 minutes late, already apologizing, I found her sitting alone at a long table set for 12. 11 of the place settings were untouched, the napkins still folded into their little peaks. A small cake sat off to the side with the candles unlit. She looked up when I came through the door, and I watched her do the fastest, saddest piece of arithmetic I have ever seen a person do, calculating exactly how long she'd been sitting there by herself, and understanding, in the same instant, that the Count was about to have a witness. "You don't have to stay," she said, with a smile she assembled from spare parts in real time. "These things happen. People get busy. It's a Thursday." I had spent 2 years thinking of her almost exclusively as the woman who signed my performance reviews. I pulled out the chair across from her and sat down anyway. And the next 2 years of my life sat down with me. My name is Owen Reyes. I'm 34. I work in operations for a regional logistics company. I'm a coordinator, which is a polite word for the man who makes sure that when a truck is supposed to be in 3 places at once, it manages something close to 2. It is not glamorous work. Nobody grows up dreaming of routing freight. But there's a quiet satisfaction in being the person who keeps things from falling apart. And I'd built a whole life out of that satisfaction. A 1-bedroom apartment, a route to work, a standing solo table at a noodle place on Fridays. I wasn't lonely. I'd just gotten very good at being the reliable one, which I decided was its own kind of company. Her name was Claire. She was the operations manager, my boss, and my boss's equal in age, somewhere in her early 40s to my mid-30s, though she carried herself like she'd been running things since birth. She was, by unanimous and unspoken agreement of the entire floor, the most competent and least warm person any of us had ever worked for. She was fair. She was sharp enough to cut yourself on. She wore tortoise-shell reading glasses on a thin chain, and she'd put them on to read a report the way other people put on riot gear. And the whole office had learned to read those glasses like a weather system. Glasses on meant the boss was working. Glasses off meant something rarer, a person you almost never got to meet. I'll tell you why I came to that dinner when no one else did. Because it matters. My first month on the job, I made a mistake, a real one. The kind that costs a company actual money. The kind that gets a probationary new hire walked to the door by lunch. I'd misrouted a shipment so badly it became a small legend. And Claire, who I was terrified of, called me into her office, and I sat down, already composing the text I'd send my landlord. And she didn't fire me. She'd already fixed it, quietly, overnight, taking the hit upstairs herself. And she told me how I'd avoid it next time in about 4 sentences, with the glasses off, and then she said, "Everyone gets 1. That was yours. Don't make me regret it," and sent me back to my desk. She never mentioned it again. She never took credit for saving me. I don't think anyone else on that floor ever knew it happened. So when an invitation went out for her birthday, an oddly personal one, from a woman who never did personal, a real restaurant and a real evening, and the team treated it like an optional all-staff because they couldn't imagine Claire actually wanting them there, I RSVP'd yes, and I meant it. Because 2 years earlier she had shown up for me when she had no reason to. I told myself that was the whole of it. She was my boss. I was returning a professional kindness. You do not let yourself read past the word boss. It is a very short word, and I had built a very tall wall on top of it. The dinner did not go the way a dinner is supposed to go. I sat down across from her in that private room with its 11 untouched settings and its unlit cake, and for a few minutes we both performed the fiction that this was fine, that a few people would still trickle in, that the others had simply gotten the time wrong. A waiter came, and, with the terrible gentleness of a man who has seen this before, asked if he should start clearing some of the places. I watched Claire's jaw do something small and controlled. "Leave them," she said. And then, a beat later, quieter, "No. Go ahead," and he cleared them, one by one, 10 settings, folding away 10 napkins, carrying off the evidence of 10 people who'd had something better to do. And I sat there and watched the most competent person I knew get smaller in her chair with each one. And I understood that I was witnessing something she would have given a year's salary for me not to see. So I did the only useful thing I could think of. I picked up the dessert menu and said, "Well, 11 people just freed up their share of the budget, and I think it would be irresponsible, fiscally, not to order the most expensive thing on this menu and split it." She looked at me, and the glasses were off, and for 1 second the whole boss-shaped suit of armor was just gone, and underneath it was a tired woman on her birthday who'd been let down by the world one more time. Then the corner of her mouth moved. "It's a tomahawk," she said. "It's for 2 people and it costs as much as a flight." I said, "Then it's exactly enough for the 2 of us and the ghosts of 11 cowards." And she laughed, a real one, surprised out of her, the sound of a door opening in a house you thought was empty. We stayed 3 hours. We did not talk about work, or barely. I learned she'd moved to this city alone for the job 2 years back and had never quite managed to grow a life around it, because the work ate the exact hours where a life is supposed to go, and by the time you notice the trade, you've already made it. I learned she'd grown up the responsible one in a family of people who weren't, which is how you become the kind of adult who organizes everyone else's birthdays and forgets to want one of her own. I learned she was funny, bone dry, devastating. A humor she clearly kept in a locked drawer somewhere far from the office. She did an impression of our regional VP that nearly killed me. We lit the candles eventually, and she let me sing the stupid song, badly. Just me, the worst birthday choir ever assembled, and she blew them out and wouldn't tell me the wish. When the check came, I tried to grab it, and she gave me a look that could have stopped a forklift mid-lift, and paid for her own birthday dinner. And I let her, because I understood by then that letting her keep that one last piece of control was the kindest thing left on the table. In the parking lot, she stopped and looked at me, the night cold around us, and said, "Owen, thank you for coming. And I'd consider it a personal favor if Monday we both pretended tonight was a normal team turnout." She put the glasses back on, right there in the dark where she didn't need them, and I understood that the armor was going back on for both our sakes. "Of course," I said. And I drove home with a sentence I refused to finish sitting in the passenger seat the whole way. Monday, the wall was back up, brick for brick. Glasses on. Owen. The Hendricks route, like Thursday, had been a hallucination we'd agreed to share. And I told myself that was correct and good. I told myself I'd done a decent thing for a decent person, and the decent thing now was to file it under colleague and never open the drawer again. She was my boss. There were policies with numbers. There were words like reporting structure that exist precisely, so men like me don't finish sentences like the one I'd driven home with. I repeated all of this to myself with great discipline, the way you recite a procedure you don't want to admit you've stopped believing in. You can tell a lot about a man by the rules he keeps reading aloud to himself. The trouble was that I'd met the person under the boss now, and you can't unmeet someone. So I started seeing her, the real her, the one the glasses hid. I saw the way she ate lunch alone at her desk every single day, with the door open, which I now understood was not a power move, but an invitation no one had ever once accepted. I saw her reapply that boss voice in the reflection of the elevator doors before a meeting, the way you'd straighten a tie. I noticed the planner she kept her whole life in, analog, handwritten, and I noticed one afternoon when she left it open on the shared printer that the only thing in the little box for her actual birthday had been the dinner. No other plans, before or after. The whole day blank, except the thing 11 people skipped. And things began to shift, in the small, deniable ways. A second coffee appeared on my desk one morning. The good kind from the place 3 blocks over, no note. And when I looked up, she was already looking at her monitor with the particular intensity of a person who has just done something and wants to be seen not having done it. She started leaving her office door not just open but pointed, somehow, toward my desk. In a budget meeting where a VP tried to throw my department under a truck, she said, flatly, glasses on, "Reyes is the reason that Route runs at all, and I'd thank you not to plan around losing him." And didn't look at me once, and I had to study the carpet to keep my face in order. From a woman who rationed approval like wartime sugar, it was a billboard. Even Marisol noticed. Marisol sat next to me, had been at the company a decade, and missed nothing. She watched Claire walk past my desk and slow by a quarter step, and said, without looking up from her screen, "You know she requested you for that account herself." Over 2 people with more years. She let that sit. She doesn't do that. In 10 years, I've never seen her do that. And then she went back to her spreadsheet and left me to sit in the wreckage of it. It came to a head on a late night, the 2 of us alone, the way these things insist on happening. A shipment had gone catastrophically wrong. A real one. A Claire's first month saving me one, and she and I were the only 2 who stayed to claw it back. Past 9, past 10. The office empty and humming. Both of us at the war table with cold coffee and a map of the eastern seaboard going wrong in real time. We fixed it. We always could. Together, that was the thing nobody else had noticed yet. That the 2 of us solved problems like one mind, with 2 keyboards. And when it was done, and the last truck was rerouted, and the crisis exhaled, we sat back in the quiet, and she took the glasses off and set them on the table, and neither of us got up to leave. The fluorescent lights buzzed. The city was dark in the windows. There was a 1.5 foot of war table between her hand and mine, both of us still half turned toward the screen out of habit, and I have spent my entire career calculating exactly how to get a thing from where it is to where it needs to be. The optimal route, the shortest path, the least friction. I could not, sitting there, have plotted the 18 inches between us if you'd given me all night and a satellite. It was the one logistics problem I had no model for. I noticed her glasses folded on the table between us, like something set down. I noticed she hadn't reached to pick them back up. In 2 years, I had never once seen Claire sit with the glasses off and not reach for them. She broke it first. She always would. "Do you know what I wished?" she said, looking at the dark window, not at me, "when you made me blow out those candles." Her hands were flat on the table. I wished that I hadn't spent 2 years making myself so hard to love that the only person who showed up for my birthday was the one I'd ordered to be there in his job description. Her voice thinned. "And then I looked at you across that ridiculous tomahawk and I thought, no, he's not here because it's his job. He's here because he's the only person in that building who ever bothered to look behind the glasses. And I have been trying to put them back on around you ever since, and they keep not working." That landed. 2 years of armor, undone at a war table at 10 p.m. I went still. My throat closed and I made myself wait through it, because the body knows before the mouth, and what I said next had to be true and it had to be careful, both at once. So I gave her the out. And I named the line, because the line was real, and she of all people deserved a man who'd say it out loud. Claire, you're my boss. I need you to hear me say that, because it means whatever happens next, nothing has to. You can pick those glasses up right now, and we go back to the Hendricks route, and I will never, ever bring this up again, and your name on my reviews stays exactly as clean as it is. I'd never put you in a position. You showed up for me once when you didn't have to, and I am not going to repay that by becoming a problem you have to manage. I held her eyes. You decide this. Not me. I've gotten very good at staying in my lane. She didn't pick up the glasses. She moved them aside instead, deliberately, clearing the table between us. I'm so tired, she said, of being hard to love, and her voice cracked clean through on the last word. Something in me routed true, the whole network lighting up at once. I came to that dinner because 2 years ago you were the only one who showed up for me, I said, and I have spent every day since pretending the reason I noticed everything about you was professional diligence. It wasn't. When something goes right, you're the first person I want to tell, and the last one I let myself. When it goes wrong, it's already you I'm walking toward. You eat lunch alone with the door open, and it's been killing me for a year. Because I sit 40 feet away wanting to walk in, and I keep reading the policy instead. My voice went rough. So here's what we do. First thing tomorrow, I request a transfer to Dvorak's team. Different reporting line, no glasses, no policy, no problem to manage. And then I take you to dinner. A real one. Just us. No 11 cowards. No job description. And you find out what it's like to be the person somebody shows up for on purpose. Her eyes went bright and completely unguarded. No glasses. Nothing between her face and the world, and she made a sound that was half a laugh and half the other thing, and she reached across the cleared table and took my hand off the keyboard, just took it, the way you take a thing that's been yours longer than you'd admit, and held on. And then the office phone on the war table lit up and rang, shattering, at 10:40 at night, and we both jerked back. And the caller ID said it was the overnight dispatcher. And Claire closed her eyes. If that's the Hendricks truck again, she said, I'm going to lie down on the actual interstate. I picked it up. It was a wrong number. Somebody trying to reach the steakhouse 2 doors down, asking if we took reservations for a party of 12. I looked at Claire. I said into the phone, You'll want to confirm everyone's actually coming, and hung up, and she laughed so hard she had to put her head down on the cleared table, glasses forgotten. Birthday wish apparently granted 8 months late. I transferred to Dvorak's team the next week. I want to be clear that we did it properly. Different reporting line. A conversation with HR neither of us enjoyed. All of it above board, because she'd spent her whole career being the person who did things right. And I wasn't going to be the reason she stopped. 3 months later, she ate lunch with the door closed for the first time in 2 years. Because she wasn't alone in there. A year after that, I learned her birthday was coming around again, and I did something quietly that I'll admit made me nervous. I told the floor the real story of the empty table, just once, to the people who mattered. The ones who'd slowly figured out who she actually was once the glasses came off. And on the night I walked her into the back room of the same steakhouse, and this time the table set for 12 had 12 people at it. Marisol and Dvorak, and the overnight dispatcher who'd never once met her in daylight, and the others. She stopped in the doorway and did the arithmetic again. The same fast, silent math from a year before, except this time it came out the other way, and she had to take the glasses off to wipe her eyes, and she did not put them back on for the rest of the night. Nobody cleared a single place setting. There weren't any to clear. Years later, when people ask how the two of us got together, and they always ask, because she was my boss and nobody came to her birthday makes people put their forks down. She tells the version where a junior coordinator took pity on a lonely manager and a tomahawk steak. I tell the version where the most competent woman I'd ever met spent 2 years making herself unlovable on purpose, and one Thursday I refused to let her get away with it. We argue about which of us was lonelier. We're both wrong. We were exactly as lonely as each other, which is, I've come to think, the whole reason it worked. Nothing about her ever really changed. She's still the sharpest person in any room, still keeps her whole life in a handwritten planner, still puts the glasses on like riot gear before a meeting. The only difference is that now, when she comes home and takes them off and sets them on the table, there's someone there who spent the whole day looking forward to the face underneath. It was never new, the thing between us. It had been sitting at a table set for 12, with the candles unlit and the napkins still folded into their little peaks, waiting for one single person to stay. I just stayed. I think, in the end, that's the whole of it. So, what would you have done if you'd shown up to your boss's birthday and realized you were the only one who came? Would you have made an excuse and slipped out, or would you have pulled up a chair? And have you ever been the only one who showed up for someone? Or, harder still, been the person nobody showed up for? Tell me your story down in the comments. If this one found you tonight, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.